economists on the left and the right are against price gouging laws because
price gouging is good.
Price gouging is actually a good thing. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but there's a lot of research behind that. Yet that this only applies during like disasters, right? So like
topic one. Daniel Snyder, owner of the NFL Washington Commanders, is being pressured to relinquish his team. Snyder has been the focus of an endless amount of embarrassing controversies for the league, and there was a big push to get him out the door. However, as it stands, this would involve Snyder selling the team, which could put billions in his pocket. Should that be the case, let's imagine that an NFL owner was found guilty of committing a crime. The offense was serious enough, should they be forced to forfeit their team? For example, if the owner sexually assaulted his employees, should they be able to make a profit off the team sale? Dan Snyder, garbage individual, and who has a sexual misconduct allegations, against him. I don't think anything's been proven, so hashtag, allegedly. But just overall garbage human, and racist and bigot, just terrible human being. They're trying to move him out, which is great. But as we've seen with other owners, not just NFL owners, right? When you lose a sports team, you get a windfall. Just exploring that topic. We'll start with Wick for an opening statement.
Yeah, so when it comes to bad actions or when you hurt other people, should you be able to profit off of that in some way? I think that for what we could consider genuinely just shitty behavior, yeah, that's fine. If they're just pressuring him out because they don't want him because he's racist or because he's bigoted or misogynistic or these other things, okay, yeah, they shouldn't be able to steal his shit because he's racist, basically, right? Or take his house or seize his assets and things like that. Now, there is a line where if you do harm to people, like if you rape someone or you commit some sort of act, like you kill someone or you break their legs or put them in the hospital, these types of things, eventually, yes, if your assets should be seized to help pay for whatever it is that you did to make restitution, right? But when it comes to just being a bigot, no, I think that's fundamentally a flawed way to look at it. You shouldn't have your assets seized because you are a bigot. You shouldn't be a bigot. You should face social pressure, social censure, but legal censure, no. That's my take.
Scott, please.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I was just sit back on this one a little bit because I really don't understand what even is going on other than just like a hatred of the existence of private property. Like you can't craft this question unless you're just a full-blown socialist because it just doesn't make sense. Like he bought a team in 1999 for $800 million. It's worth somewhere between like 4 to 6 billion now. That's the investment he had. And he also did a lot of really shitty stuff that he should get sued for. And if it is proven correctly, that if the allegations are proven true, then he should pay them a fuck ton of money. I don't understand the concept here that's like other than like eat the rich. And like if you want to have that conversation, I can crush all you dumb socialists all fucking day. But like if you want to talk about this specific incantation of it and whether or not it makes sense in the greater context that people get a windfall, well, I mean, like he bought a team for 800 million. He managed it for the last 23 years, and you may think he did a shitty job, but I mean, he managed it nevertheless. And there are potential abuses. And if he abused those people, then he should pay a fuck ton of money for that. I just don't understand the question. Maybe it'll be elucidated further what is interesting about it. Maybe I don't fucking get football. I don't know. Also, for the record, super shitty guy. Like, right? Like I'm with you there, right? Like even the season's tickets in 2009 where he was like suing people for $65,000 because they didn't have money to pay for their season's tickets, but had 200,000 people on a waiting list that wanted to purchase those season's tickets. Like he doesn't seem like a good guy, especially if he was secretly recording cheerleaders as they were at photo shoots and then editing that video together to make his own spank bank. Like, yeah, he's a piece of shit and you should take away a lot of fucking money from the guy. But like, he still has private property. That doesn't invalidate that. And it just seems like a weird way to be like, hey guys, we hate the rich, don't we? Fuck the rich. Let's fuck them over. And it's just, I don't know. It seems silly.
I love it. I love Scott says I'm gonna sit back and I'm just gonna listen, right? He goes for like guaranteed the longest opening. But no, I appreciate you, Scott. Thank you so much for that. Let's go to Corey.
Yeah, typical sitting back Scott, or typical fence sitting, just like me. No surprise. But yeah, so I think what comes to mind is I think this is just another example of why I think football is stupid multiple times over, and I have no problems banning football for not only other reasons, but I think this just like makes my case even further. But it seems like the best example that I can use as a Canadian is like Hockey Canada is in shambles because there's and it should be in shambles because at least there's proven misconduct multiple times over that goes back decades, and we should contend with that. There should be repercussions, and I sort of like echo the same sentiment that Wick just brought up in terms of like if there's actual like proven misconduct, and that as sort of framing the question like they're guilty of something, like there should be recourse. I do believe that they shouldn't. I have no problem saying like yeah, screw the rich. I don't think billionaires should exist. I will gladly bite that bullet. But like yeah, so if someone is found guilty, it seems like as of now there's not really good recourse, and like this person is being rewarded. I think that's a testament to just I don't know how poor something is flawed in the system somewhere. But like yeah, if there's proven misconduct, something negative, they should be held accountable in a much better way than it is currently.
Thank you so much. We'll go to our friend Lactoid.
All right, so Snyder should not be forced to sell the league by any kind of legal mechanism. The article linked actually has another link in it that links to a list of scandals that Snyder has been involved in. And after going through it, like the vast majority of these scandals are just like ridiculous. They're not even scandals at all. Like, oh, like he tried to sell this doll for $30, and then like 2 months later it was selling for $23.95. And like that's like what? I'm not kidding you. That's like one of the scandals listed. That like his doll, his fucking like commander's doll didn't sell that well, as if that's like some scandal. So most of the scandals are just complete bullshit. And I think a lot of it's just media hype. The scandals that are serious appear to be the sexual harassment allegations, right? I think that's an actual scandal that we can take a look at. And I think the option should be available to people who if they were sexually harassed by Snyder, that they have the option to file a lawsuit and to get money if he actually committed a crime. That all being said, if the NFL controls who can own a team in the league, then he very well may not have a choice. If the NFL decides that he's so bad for their brand that the Commanders need new leadership, if that's part of the agreement of owning that team, is the NFL can just kick out owners, that could be an issue here. And for the people rooting for that, I think there's a double-edged sword here, which is that the NFL could also remove owners if they did things that you might agree with. So let's say they removed owners for allowing Colin Kaepernick to kneel on the field during the national anthem, or let's say they removed an owner who wanted to change the name from, not even sure I can say the racist term that it used to be, to the Commanders. Maybe the NFL is like, no, keeping that name is good for our brand, so we're going to remove anybody who tries to change it. Like if that's what the NFL can do, I mean, you got to be careful about the power they can exercise.
So much. Please, Amanda.
Yeah, I definitely feel like there was an assumption that I was going to carry the socialist flag. I'd just like to say that's not any plans that I have on this front. But when it comes to like the actual sale and stuff like that, I do agree with you guys on the front of like if it's property, and like things have to get sold. I think it's more of a question of the court of public opinion, and if the general public just looking at all of the different odds from an NFL perspective, like the team itself, like they only really have to, this is only really going to be a problem if like from the general public perception is that this is a negative, he's really bad, it doesn't reflect well on the brand and the image and everything else that they want to represent. In the same way that the Colin Kaepernick situation, social issues aside, like, and that actual part of the conversation, it was also an issue of like PR and how that image represented like NFL as well as his team and stuff like that. So I would say from any sort of like fear from a marketing standpoint, like the only real concern is if this potentially reflects negatively on like the team itself. But if if there are issues with him with sexual assault and stuff like that, like that has to be actually held in a criminal court if there's a criminal case against this person. But if not, this is one of those goes to the public. This goes to the Twitterverse of, I'm so mad at him because he did this, that, and the fifth, and it's unfair. But if we live in a world where we're all of our opinions are valid at the same point, like this is just going to be a little pissy party on the internet for a couple of people. But otherwise, like he's just going to go to the bank. He's going to put it like on his little offshore tax haven, and he'll be fine.
Okay. All right. All right. So Spartacus, I'm happy to have you continue our pissy party. And before you do, Amanda, just be aware we can hear when you like scrolling your mouse or something.
Oh, sorry.
Happens to be close. Yeah, no worries. Don't worry. Just want you to be aware of that. Spartacus, piss away.
So when it comes to this, the NFL has already set precedent, actually as close to as this year, to where the NFL has suspended and fined owner of the Miami Dolphins for what they consider to be violations of the league's policies. I believe that right now the NFL can suspend the Commanders owner, and then carry that suspension over until it maintains new ownership, and at that point the suspension would be released from the Commanders. I believe that, and then to take on that, the next part of the question is basically imagine that the NFL, that basically the Commanders owner was found guilty of committing a crime. I believe at that point in time, you could utilize the Son of Sam law or something similar to where people who are found guilty of a crime cannot later gain money or gain basically any monetary value from the commissions of their crime. And this would be point blank that selling the team would be a monetary value that was gained from the commissions of their crimes. And so I think that if found guilty of a crime, that the owner of the Commanders could easily fall into the Son of Sam law, to where he is therefore forced to basically give up the Commanders to a seller, and the money that he would gain from the seller would go directly to the victims. And I think that would be appropriate in this scenario.
Thank you. OJ off his book, man. Never forget. Let's go to our friend Razor.
This is the downside of being close to last. A lot of the points that I would have had have already been stated. Sprouticus actually gave a much better wording of what I had in my mind. And obviously Scott ended up saying something good about the fact that we shouldn't just take away things for something like that. I have, but I will say that if he is found that he has done something heinous, or he's done like rape allegations, sexual assault, whatever things has going on for him, he should not be allowed to get any fund. Like was probably just said, should not allowed to get any funds from getting rid of the team. Just remove him entirely. That's just what I think of it, at least on this front. I don't know the Commanders all that much. I'm a Rams guy. I don't know any other team
much. And finally, our friend.
Yeah, I'm with Scott on this one, actually. Sort of. I mean, there are other situations in which I can be totally for like seizing a company from private individuals, right? But I don't think this is one of them. This is like an entertainment company. Like it's not something that has anything to do with like national security or whatever, right? This is literally just an entertainment company. And so sue him, get money from him that way. But I don't understand why we'd be pushing, or anybody would be pushing, for him to have the company just stripped from him without any kind of compensation. That's very strange.
He's already received the compensation that would be delivering of owning the Commanders. You receive a compensation every year, as in the profits of the Commanders. Selling the team and the money that would come from selling the team, especially if what is stated is true with sexual harassment, with anything like that, would come. And I would say that this would fall perfectly into the Son of Sam law. With bad
Yeah, that's a super
with criminal.
big stretch. Yeah.
Wait. So I'm trying to, with the criminal practices underneath the Commanders, while the Commanders were in, such as price gouging, which is a criminal practice. So things like that. that it allegates, right? If those were proven in a criminal court, I believe the Son of Sam law would be applicable underneath those certain laws, correct? Or
No.
those certain crimes. No, why
So,
wouldn't
like,
Son of Sam law be applicable?
So like if he let's say he sex trafficked, like let's say he sold the video he took of those girls, right?
Okay.
And made profit off of that, right?
Okay.
Then obviously the state could seize those assets that he gained from that, because that's him gaining it from the commission of a crime, right? But you can't like, that would be like saying a restaurant owner, right, was selling cocaine, right, out of a restaurant. Well, you could seize the assets he got from the cocaine sale and maybe some additional assets. But like, if the restaurant itself was profitable, you don't get to seize everything unless he was using it as a front.
You could seize the restaurant if you're using it as a front. If you're using it as a front, you could seize the restaurant.
He's sprinkling cocaine on the dishes.
These are examples of those things, right? But his sexual harassment is not like a crime that he's using the NFL as a means to cover up. That's just him being a rich asshole. Like, they're not really connected. Like, you'd have to have an amazing fucking lawyer, and you'd have to set like insane precedent for that to work.
So, and we also,
but I do think he could be sued out of existence if like the trauma was enough and restitution was high enough.
So what about price gouging? What about
billions and billions?
Price
I don't
gouging.
know.
That's what about price gouging though? Because that's considered a criminal practice. And I said no. I said if he's found guilty by a court of law for these allegations, because right now they're just allegations. For these allegations, he's found guilty for them. I believe the Son of Sam law will be applicable in this scenario.
Wait, hold on. So if he price gouges, you strip a team from him worth like $1 billion or something. That's ridiculous. Like, how does that make sense?
Oh, I don't think he's not still going to come out ahead. Well, take aside the sexual harassment victim suing him. But no, I think that he would still come out ahead. But it would definitely limit that amount to where he doesn't get the extra $7 billion from selling his team that he has used criminal business practices to therefore make the team's value higher.
Well, hold on. Let's talk about a couple of things here. We got to talk about a couple of things. So. We often see this in the drug trade where they will seize the money, but the reason is because the idea is that money is presumed to have come from the drug trade if they raid a business that has a bunch of money and they're also selling drugs, right? So they're saying the money is tied to the drugs. If you can prove, this money is not tied to the drugs at all, like here's a video of me like making this money not selling drugs or some crazy shit.
Yeah, but that's civil asset forfeiture.
Yeah, civil asset forfeiture, exactly. The Son of Sam law is different. Scott, you're right. It has more to do with profiting off of the actual crime. So I don't think that would apply here unless he published some kind of memoir of like how he harassed people and then made money off that. I don't see him.
So
doing
let me specify
the business practices that I want to ask you about too. Like
let me specify what I mean by applicable then. So you're saying that writing memoirs is going to be the most often practice of the Son of Sam law. Yes, I agree that writing memoirs, writing a book, doing a movie deal, reenactments of the crime, it's all going to be applicable underneath the Son of Sam law. Now, what I'm stating underneath the Son of Sam law is that you've done these criminal business practices to move this business along to make it gain value, and you do not get to recoup that value. That value that should be recouped is not going to be recouped by the victims.
What business
because that would
practices?
be post because price gouging for one.
Hold on. That'd be a very big one. Why did he price gouge? Where did he? Price gouging is only like when you sell certain commodities during disasters. It's not like you can't price.
No, price gouging is anytime. Price gouging is anytime. It's not football memorabilia. It wasn't football memorabilia.
We don't have price controls in America.
So it wasn't football memorabilia that I was talking about. It was specifically.
Could you imagine?
Can we stop entertaining
specifically
this? Like, there are interesting things to talk about here, but this ain't it, gang. Can we stop?
So it was
clearly wrong. That's all.
No, it's not clearly wrong. So it was specifically talking about standing room only, and the seats, and then the suites were being price gouged up, and the seats were being price gouged up to try and force people to either pay more for a seat or to go into the standing room only. This was found to be price gouging, or it found to be an allegation of price gouging, I should say. Then there's it's through the list that you gave me that I found several different.
Yeah, they might be saying that he's like price gouging. They're saying like you're doing something like it's not illegal in the sense of like there is like laws against there's like a disaster like a hurricane. Which, by the way, we can have a whole topic on that because those laws are actually really bad, and most economists on the left and the right are against price gouging laws.
Price gouging is good.
Price gouging is actually a good thing. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but there's a lot of research behind that. Yet that
I'd
this
be
only
interested in
applies
hearing
during
about
like
that.
disasters, right? So like toilet paper, you can't, or like food or fresh water. Doesn't apply to like
All right,
football.
you know what?
Could
We'll
you,
see if we get in 2008.
Could you send me an article or something on that prop scout? It sounds actually really
Yeah,
interesting.
it was on your
I'd
article. I'll
actually
send it to you
Absolutely.
like
though.
to hear that.
It's going to be very like
about that.
economics,
I'll copy
like
it over, but yeah.
heavy article though, for sure.
So
I'll copy it over, but
I'd
yeah.
like to read.
I wanted to make more of a case for taking away these teams, right? Maybe forfeiting the team. One thing, these teams, especially today, maybe in a different incarnation of the NFL, but as they are today, are not so private, right? Certainly not in their funding mechanism. Teams today receive an incredible amount of tax subsidies. They receive tax breaks, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I might be. I think the NFL is like tax free, right? Like they're not subject to.
Lucky.
I think so. If I'm wrong, I do apologize, but I believe I remember that's what that was.
I think they usually get tax breaks in order to make their stadiums or something, and then
Yeah, well, yeah. So
merchandising is not tax free, but they have a lot of state protection of the industry, which is a problem, obviously.
I'll double check the tax thing, but I'm almost certain they have some sort of tax protections. But in any case, it doesn't matter. They as was just mentioned, was in terms of their stadiums, like a lot of money gets paid into these things, right? Why? Because these cities, well, they compete for business, but there is a lot of pride wrapped up in these things, right? They are a representation of the greater public in that local
I'm not
area.
verifying this, really. I'm just going word of mouth here, but like someone in my chat said, that's because the organization is the owners coming together, and so the organization may be tax exempt, but the owners themselves and the transactions that they take are taxed. Right.
Okay,
So
fair
it
enough.
would basically be like double jeopardy on the taxes, right? Like you would tax the owner and then you would also tax the organization. But the organization are the owners coming together, which is why they're tax exempt.
Okay. But in any case, right? Since there's so much public investment, I'm not sure that they're so private. And we already put restrictions on what organizations can do once they take public money, right? And this is an immense amount of public money do take. So if you have an owner who is doing something terrible, right? And like I use Dan Snyder as a jumping off point, but that's why I created that hypothetical, right? To for us to start working within that realm, right? If they have done something terrible, let's say child exploitation or something, right? Should it be the case that this person who may have just been convicted of a terrible sex crime against minors receive billions for their property, right?
Yeah,
could it be the
that's
case
exactly
if that locale
Have you ever done that in Vatican City?
be able to take that property that they have invested millions, sometimes billions in?
I just want to point out really quick
just as I
before
said
we
in my
move on, getting a tax break is not receiving
that has
public
nothing
funds
to do
from
with
the
the
state.
Oh boy.
Right?
Okay.
That is just them not being punished and stolen from
That's cute.
at the same rate.
Thank
That doesn't
you.
make them a public
less
There is a
entity
difference, yeah.
because they get less taxes, right?
Sure.
They're not
Okay.
taking your taxes aren't paying them. They're just not quote unquote paying their fair share
So,
of theft.
It's like if somebody doesn't rob your house.
Oh
and you're
God,
like,
I don't.
Thank you.
That's
I really
cute.
appreciate.
Society,
I really
ladies and
appreciate
gentlemen.
the free TV that you didn't steal from me. Yeah.
Right.
So
But
to your
it's
question, Prime, to the actual topic at hand, okay? So I'm
Thank
going to
you.
try to kind of bring back and try to engage with your question as you mean it here. So I think that when someone does something horrific and they cause harm, that they should be required to pay restitution. I am okay with someone who has done a terrible thing and hurt a lot of people or one person, their assets being seized and them being forced to pay for the restitution of whatever it is that happened, right? I'm okay with that. So in that realm, right? Like if someone does something that causes immense amounts of trauma, pain, and is illegal, they get sued. That absolutely should come from their coffers, right? From the sale of the thing. But there is no reason to do this to the extreme, right? So if all in all the court settlement comes up for $2 billion, let's say it's a huge amount, $2 billion, but he makes $7 billion off the sale, right? Like, I don't think you should just take the $5 billion extra just because, oh, well, that's just extra. And we just need to take away all good things from this person. No, we stay within the bounds of the law. We stay in the bounds
could
of
we?
the.
There's a problem
Could we?
here in
No.
our justice system that we're not elucidating.
Before you get to that, let me just ask him this. What would you be in favor of adding? Because you said you want to stay within the laws, right? And you say like this is outside of the law.
Bounds of the rulings, yes.
Would you be okay of saying, this is kind of where I was trying to go with this, that adding a morality clause into these subsidies, right? You're going to get this level of subsidies, and so if you if you get this level of investment from the city, right? We'll help you pay for your fucking stadium.
I don't like morality clauses.
Okay. Hold on.
Like morality.
Let me just get it out. If you take this money, right? But you violate this clause, well, then we are in our right to forfeit. Like, and it has to be, of course, something quite serious. But yeah, go ahead.
But I mean, like, depending on, but just real quick, like, depending on what like is in that clause specifically, like, if the clause is something like "don't rape people," okay, yeah, that makes sense. But if the clause is something "don't be racist," I would be against it. Like, what does that even mean? Right?
Yeah,
like,
well, I said something quite serious. Okay, don't rape.
If you don't like it,
we'll start with don't rape. Okay, great. Then that's good.
Don't take the public money. Don't take if you can't agree to not be racist, just don't take the money.
But it's okay though, because I mean, ESPN is reporting the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of Virginia is investigating allegations that Washington and Snyder engaged in financial improprieties. So this is already being investigated by the Eastern District of Virginia. So and by the U.S. Attorney's Office. So like all of these are already being investigated. So this is within the law. These could become potential convicted crimes. They're being investigated right now.
What specifically is being investigated?
Financial improprieties. I can look into it more if you'd like me to. I go to the ESPN source.
So,
like,
while he's looking that up,
I was just I support. So I would use. I'll try to be quick, Scott. So I'll try to like relate it to myself of like as a Canadian and who's in like a crazed hockey town, the Montreal Canadiens. So I'm all in favor of what you outlined of like a morality clause of like if the owner of the Montreal Canadiens is like found to like proven to do something awful, like I would want them to be like either sued or like some sort of restitution. So much so that they're like heavily penalized, and I have no problem watching the Montreal Canadiens fail as a result of like pretty much like the owner being like an awful person. As much as it would be, as much as I don't know, the entirety of Quebec would fall into a depression as a result of that. I have no problem with it.
So here you go. So here I have it. So one former employee testified before Congress saying the team had two separate financial books, one with underreported ticket revenue that went to the NFL and the full complete picture. According to testimony, Snyder was aware of the numbers shared with the league while also being privy to the actual data. And according to other testimony, financial misconduct included making it intentionally difficult for season ticket holders to recoup refundable deposit money, counting some of those leftover funds as a different kind of revenue that doesn't need to be shared with the league, and shifting money from ticket sales for NFL games to other events at FedEx Field as a way of hiding that money from the league.
Now that sounds like potentially illegal things that he's doing, right? Not pricing
right? Taking the money away from him.
Let's go to Scott and then Amanda. He's been trying to jump in.
So I think another thing that is shocking to us is how much money this person has, right? And what we're not addressing, I think, that is a big part of the restitution piece here, is that in many states there are caps in terms of civil court for how much you can receive from someone for an allegation. So like in some states, if let's say you're the victim of child molestation, the state says, past $250 or past $300,000, there's no more. I think we saw this famously with like the Johnny Depp, Amber Heard situation where like he won a bunch of money, but it's like, we didn't really win all of that money because there's a cap. Right. And so I think part of the problem that I think we should be addressing is if a jury determines that is exactly how much is owed and a judge agrees, right, then why does that cap need to be? I have no issue if women that were cheerleaders, right, were taken advantage of, their body was filmed without their consent, they were part of this dude's spank bank, they were they were asked to go into a limousine. In one situation, one person alleges that they were a recovering alcoholic, and like individuals in his team were asking her to like drink and forcing drinks on her. Then she was taken to a place where the team had prostitutes, and then was told like, oh, just go in the basement, it'll be okay. And so this cheerleader is a recovering alcoholic drunk at a place where they're prostitutes. Now that's an allegation. I don't know if that's true, but if that is true, like if a jury determines that that's worth $20 million, then like, you know,
I know Lactoid's take on this. Lactoid is totally.
Right, I don't give a fuck. Right? Price and trauma are subjective, and I don't give a fuck. And if he has the money to pay it because he just made $6 billion,
I agree with you. It's subjective.
I have no fucks given. Right? Like I don't. You know what I mean?
Like, let's let Amanda end. She's been trying to break in. So, and then after that,
if I can entertain you all this, yeah, I'm not great. Thank you. I'm not great with NFL. Definitely same boat as Corey. Do not care. But I will be honest. I also really don't care about hockey. So
you're not Canadian. Yeah, get out of Canada.
Get rid of my passport. But as far as it goes, really just to speak to a Canadian topic, it does honestly give me like Catholic Church, Truth and Reconciliation vibes, in the fact that like in Canada, for anybody who needs the TLDR, the Indigenous population have gotten like, you know, the best treatment of all of Canadians. And basically because of especially the residential schools from the 90s and everything before, they, in Canadian news, in case you guys care, I know you don't, the Catholic Church is being put to the blame for all of the like the misdoings and the mistrust that has happened in the Indigenous community. And it's like totally fair. But in terms of that conversation of money, there's a huge question of like, are you going to pay out the Indigenous communities that the Catholic Church? And they're not going to do it. So like when I hear this NFL stuff, I go like, yeah, that's cool. It's really neat. If they do it, like, wow, you guys really care about football down there. But like otherwise, it's not going to happen. Like if the Catholic Church isn't going to get like footed the bill, like you think the NFL is? Come on.
Yeah.
Lactoid and Wick.
So I'm not aware of any. I'm not aware of any. I mean, there's sometimes limits on like punitive damages. I don't know what the limits are, the caps are for Washington, D.C. I also know that a lot of places don't have caps at all. Where I think I diverge a little bit from you, Scott, is that juries are juries are a part of the justice system, but they're also like incredibly naive. They're incredibly so, for example, like we're taught to speak to them as if they understand things at a third grade level, because on an average jury understands things at a third grade level. Juries can be wildly inaccurate. They can and give judgments that are just ridiculous. So, like last year, for example, a jury awarded a judgment against the jury awarded a judgment against Walmart for $125 million. What did Walmart do that was worth $125 million? Well, they adjusted the schedule of somebody with Down syndrome, and Walmart was found that by not accommodating the person with Down syndrome, by giving them the schedule they wanted, they had committed discrimination, which was apparently worth $125 million. And that's what a jury found. Okay, you can look into that case. I'm not exaggerating it. The court system is replete with judgments that would make you scratch your head. Like, holy shit, this person makes 40, for a year of labor of their life is worth 40 grand. And now like they're getting a $300 million windfall because like this weird thing happened and a jury decided that it was worth $300 million. I am really concerned with incredibly high judgments. And in this case, like now, based on the story you said, I don't think that's a $1 billion case. I don't think that you can say like, well, I think the pain was worth $1 billion. I think that living in a society in which people and organizations have judgments against them at that incredibly high level, it's going to be incredibly destructive, and it's going to destroy.
I want to piggyback on
this. Let's go to Wick, Corey, and then was it Razor and Spartacus? Did you want to go as well?
Yes, please.
I want to piggyback like 2 sentences.
I'm sorry.
It's never 2 sentences. It's never just 2 sentences. That's the problem
2
here.
sentences.
There's a cap. They were putting a fucking cap.
All right, I agree with you. All right, I agree with you. But I think there are better ways to do this in terms of going through an appeal process or something.
Okay, fair
Not a
enough.
cap.
There's your 2.
I was 3.
You stuck in that 3 at the very end. You couldn't even stay with the cap. But there are reasons caps are a good thing. Caps are a good thing. We could argue about whether this cap is appropriate or we should adjust the level of these caps and things like that. But not only when it comes to civil cases, but when it comes to criminal cases too, right? We have maximum sentences for a reason that we don't allow weird like juries to advocate for weird out of the box, ludicrous punishments for relatively minor crimes or even major ones in some cases, right? Like this is a good thing that we have these caps in place. And I think the same thing can apply to civil forfeiture and civil cases as well. I think it's a good thing that we cap it. Now we can argue this isn't enough and it needs to be higher. And I'm all for that conversation, right? But when it comes to having a cap at all, I think putting a cap on just ludicrous case windfalls, right? Like and it's not the windfall for the person, it's the penalty to the offender, right? You shouldn't lose your home because you cut someone off in traffic, for example, or you offended. Like there should be limits to the penalties you face when you do certain actions, and we can discuss what those are.
I also want to point out another issue with juries is that it's part of our analysis when we're like deciding the value of a case about whether or not we should settle out. Like the politics of the area that you got injured matters, right? If you're in a conservative area and you get injured, you're going to get less money than if you're like in a heavily like blue area. Why? Because blue areas like give out ridiculous judgments that have no underlying basis for them. They like giving away money. Okay,
Not
just like in politics, but also.
Boy, Razor Spartacus.
Yeah, so well, I just looked it up quickly, so I might have like some details wrong, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lactoid, but it doesn't seem like you framed that case all that accurately, because from what I could be wrong, but from what I could tell, like so the individual with Down syndrome was the jury awarded them 125 million, but the cap
reduced by a cap.
The cap kicks in with 300,000.
Yeah, so I don't think that's a great example of a cap working as it should, right? But the jury awarded $120 million.
So the
jury's also aware of the cap.
Yeah, exactly. So as in like that much.
The jury is not aware of the cap. The jury is not aware of the cap. They cannot be. That would be a mistrial. You cannot tell the jury that.
They can't.
Really?
Well, can't you?
Okay.
You cannot look it up before, like, or you have to show that they're ignorant of the cap.
It's like not good.
Told you I was sitting back on this one. I've immediately switched.
No,
I didn't know that.
you can't tell the jury like the legal implications of.
No, you can't tell, but like, do you have to demonstrate, like, in whatever in the jury selection, that they are ignorant of the cap?
I mean, I don't. So not necessarily. You don't necessarily have to like prove that they're ignorant, but like juries are told that they're not. Well, they're told not to look up anything about the case, and like this is one of the reasons why lawyers are constantly struck from juries, is because they don't want people on a jury who knows the law, right? And telling the jury like certain implications of their findings, it can be a mistrial. Like if you. Like, for example, a lot of states have it where if the plaintiff is 51% negligent, they get nothing. If you tell the jury that, that's a mistrial. You cannot tell the jury that if you decide he's mostly negligent, he doesn't get any money at all. Because then the argument is, well, then they're not going to decide who is negligent based on the percentages. They're going to just try to like formulate their percentages to match what the law is, which they're not supposed to do.
Yeah. So just to hopefully understand correctly, like, yeah, you cannot inform them of the cap, but they could have the knowledge of the cap. Like it can be.
Yeah, they could. Okay, which is one of the reasons they strike lawyers off of juries.
Yeah, so there's like this is just the rule is just don't tell them, but they can have the knowledge. And so like you don't actually know that the jurors don't know it. You just know that they're not told. And so it's difficult to tease out in terms of like, well, it may very well be that the majority of the jurors like actually know, and it's like this is symbolic ruling. And also I would take issue with the way you framed it, like it was just a schedule change. Again, I could be wrong. I just quickly looked up, but it seems like
I brought this up. Juries suck.
But
you get it.
Okay.
I just want to finish off my point. But it seems like Walmart did not provide reasonable accommodation to this individual with a proven disability. And I think that needs to be taken into account.
Right. That's what the argument was. But like, I encourage everyone to go read the full facts. This person wanted a different schedule. Walmart changed their schedule and was like, no, we need you to work at these times. They said I don't know if they actually said they can't work at that time. Or
well, that was
I think actually they just didn't show up for their shift.
Well, so this is a person with Down syndrome who typically they very just like those who are neurodivergent. They very much need a regimented schedule. Typically speaking, but not all the time. And so it's like I think that's one of the reasons why they won the case of like
$125 million.
Symbolically.
I would.
The correct solution there is just allowing Walmart to turn them away, like up front. Say, hey, we're not going to hire
Oh,
you if you have Down syndrome.
Of course, he's going to say that.
Walmart can't decide the schedules for their own employees now. Like that's ridiculous.
So I hold on. Oh man, Latchwood, I actually really want to get into this with you, but later on. We'll start with our friend Razor Sprouticus. Amanda, let me know if you want to jump in. Doobie, if you want to say something else terrible, let me know. Razor, please.
Okay, so I'm hearing people talking about amounts, and whenever it comes to someone like the big rich dudes, if they are found like guilty, like we're talking like mainly singular people, and when I'm suggesting this, would there be a possibility of making it to where it's not a cap by number, it's more of a cap by percent, like not even a cap, is they rule amounts that you have to pay based off the percentage of how much you actually own. Like I feel like that would be a way to deal with the fact that people who are uber rich can basically just toss up a couple million and not care. Versus
that doesn't work either. The problem is with that is it's a reason. Just real quick, but there's a problem with that. Even going down the route I think you're going down here, there's a problem with that. So for example,
hold on. Let me finish up the last little bit, then you can get to what you're saying. I keep in mind I'm saying like the person, if it's a super rich student, he commits a big crime and it just becomes a huge he commits a crime that requires a fine. And he's just able to pay off any amount because he's rich, versus if they make it a percentage of all that he owns for that, it would be a huge punishment. It would be a huge punishment instead of a simple like.
Not necessarily. So for example, right? This is why the tax, like we need a progressive tax system, because 10% for a poor person is way different than 10% for a millionaire. Like 10%
no, that's what I mean. No, that's what I mean. I want a progressive tax rate, but in terms of
like
crimes.
cap. Or I understand what you're saying. But so, for example, even if you took 90% of a rich person's of Kanye, let's say Kanye West, right, did something terrible, and you want to take away 90%.
Like, let's say this happened.
Just roll with me here. Like someone's a billionaire, you take away 90%, right? That's a huge amount. Okay. That's a huge amount. Okay, that's still. Right, he's still $100 million in the bank, and
but he's not a billionaire anymore. He's a massive blow as well.
He will know.
Do you think he's gonna suffer? I just don't.
No, they will.
No, he would cry heavily.
Yeah,
I feel like
I'm sorry. The people that he employs would suffer. Like, what do you mean?
There's a lot of
isn't in his bank account. That's
we're taking it off of
organization.
No. That's what I'm saying. We're taking it off of the person alone. If we're talking about like if they own a big business or something like that, the money that usually is made to help that business, not the profits that the owner is taking, but
you're never gonna get much.
The system already doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
That's not how rich people operate. Rich people have assets and business interests and investments and bank loans based off of the assets that they have. They don't have a lot of money in the bank. If you're going
Elon Musk didn't hand over $44 billion, right? Like that's not how that works. He's not liquid.
He got a loan for it based off of assets from Tesla, right?
Yeah.
But regardless, the problem is that we already have a two-tiered criminal justice system, right? We have civil court and we have criminal court, right? And so civil cases
and the court of public opinion.
Well, okay, sure.
The most important one.
That's the one. Yeah. That's where this conversation will go.
That only matters to the left. The right already knows.
You guys are arguing if this dude's gonna go away, and like any of our opinions actually matter on this court case. They don't. This is the court of public opinion.
Mine specifically matter.
Yeah, public opinion. They found Kyle Rittenhouse guilty before the actual criminal court found him.
Scott, finish your point. Then we'll go to Sprouticus, and if Doobie wants to again say something terrible, we want to hear
civil
from.
Court isn't per se about justice, right? I mean, it's nobody's like using an estoppel like principle here to double the amount of restitution, in any way, shape, or form, because we have criminal courts, right? Like we don't have a one system that handles restitution. That is what civil courts do, right? So if you talk about taking a percentage of someone's assets, that's not fair to the victim. I mean, sure, it's great to the victim of people that were victimized by rich people, but it's really fucking sucks to people that were victimized by poor people, right? The whole point of civil court is to pay the victim. It's not about punishing the abuser. Like if you do something illegal, right? And to the point where it's a criminal court case, that's about justice for the victims, sure, ostensibly, but our court system's stupid anyways. But,
except for punitive
but that is
damages.
about like, right. I mean, sure. I mean, like there's a lot of gray areas here, and Lactoid could probably go on and form about forever. But like if you take 10% of a billionaire's wealth to give to a victim, that's great to that victim, but it's not so great to the Down syndrome guy that, you know, hit somebody with his car when he's leaving Walmart, right? Except for after this court case against Walmart.
All right, let's go to Spartacus.
All right, so when we actually, I hear a lot of people talk about like he's not going to be able to recoup his Saints. Like he worked hard for these Saints, etc., and so on. The revenue, just since 2013, because that's when's last is available that I could find, is $3.1 billion is the revenue from the Washington Commanders team since just 2013, which was only 9 years ago. So when we talk about this, he's owned this team for 23 years. So you might be able to double that number. I don't know what that exact number would be, but just doubling that number, you're looking at $6.2 billion that he has gained in revenue from this team. And at that point in time, the 3.1 number is 3.89, so 3.9 times his initial investment into the Washington Commanders. Let's not act like this guy, since 2013, he's gotten 3.9 his initial investment. Let's not act like this guy is not recouped. No, what do you mean it's not what it means?
Revenue here.
Yeah, revenue, like the revenue goes toward paying for salary, goes toward upkeeping the stadium, goes toward like
no. This is post that. This is
all going in
so
fucking pocket.
This is specific. This is specifically post that. This is specifically post
Then
anything.
That's not revenue. That's profit.
Okay, this is specific. Okay, sorry, I said profit. Sorry, I said revenue. I meant profit.
Yeah.
So this is specifically post anything he had to pay for. This is just money that's left over after everything's paid for. And we're looking at $3.1 billion since from 2013 to 2022.
So he's done really well. Okay,
but
like, so is there like a cap? Is there assuming there's a cap? So he's earned $6 billion apparently. So because he's earned that, we don't need to worry about him earning anymore, because we can just go in and take his shit and say, hey, you made a great investment, you're a great businessman, but you've earned enough, so we're just going to take your shit now. This thing, not if you've been
you
spent 2 decades building up and putting together, we're going to strip it from you because we've decided you earned enough money.
Not if you've been found, as the allegations assume that this individual has hidden money that was not reported to the NFL, so this was not reported. It's not reported money.
You don't take the entire fucking property from him. Like, what do you mean?
Right?
This could be asset forfeiture. Yes, this could possibly be asset forfeiture.
Scott, really quickly. So, because Sprout, one of the things that in the article that you posted, right, as evidence of this man's price gouging, was like one of the examples is, hey, he's charging people to go watch the team practice, right?
Yes.
And this is like an example of price gouging. No, he just started.
That was
charging
one
people.
example.
Do
you want to name the other examples, or should I?
Sure. Hey, they charged $20 for the Redskins Mania scratch lottery ticket. That's not price gouging. That's
which made it as expensive as any scratcher ever offered by the Virginia Lottery. And then $25.
Why is that price gouging?
25. So $25 for a special group of stadium room only tickets at FedEx Field 2008, which also, mind you, was an economic crisis. The cheap tickets were linked to the high price suites. Lobbying watchdog said Snyder was merely attempting to skirt congressional gift limits. Damning evidence, a team brochure was instructing ticket sales personnel to explain lobbying loopholes to suite customers. Snyder denied the charge. SRO tickets are now sell for $150.50 with no mention of lobbying.
This was in 2008, and apparently this allegation was made back then, and no evidence was found of it.
This allegation was not made back then. This allegation was recently made. It is being investigated.
No, that's not true. What are you talking about?
Yes. What do you mean? What am I talking about?
The allegation in 2008.
No, the allegation has come out through a whistleblower.
Okay, Scott, you be the one.
I'm going to be the one. I'm going to be the one and bite the bullet and just compare you to the Nazis. All right? Because every panel has to.
So,
all right, bring up the Nazis.
I thought I would do it.
Here we go. No. It's got to happen. It's just the rules of the internet. All right? So here's the deal. Okay? if you want to fine him and investigate him, and he's found guilty of those charges, perfectly fine. But the moment you start saying private property doesn't exist so long as we say you're bad enough of a person, that's exactly how corporation and the state works together under fascism.
If
It
you
says
utilize,
you commit a certain amount of
if you utilize your
you do a
assets,
you do a
That's-
certain amount you do
No.
a certain amount of bad things, and instead of recognizing your right to private property and then paying restitution and fines for those crimes, we get rid of your right to private property and instead nationalize it and give it to some other individual.
if
Pass
you
it on to
util-
some
if
other.
you
the
That's
definition of
exactly
evil
how
is,
fascism works.
No,
if you
that's
utilize,
not.
if you
not.
so
No, it
it,
isn't.
so there is precedence for this, and I could look up precedence if you want it. But if you utilize your assets in the commission of the crime, in a commission of a crime, they are now up for the possibility of asset forfeiture. If you utilize those
Scott-
assets in the commission of a crime, they can be forfeited assets.
Scott, I think it's really interesting that what he's being accused of is like sexual degeneracy, money magic, right? Moving shit around. Exactly the same kind of shit that the Nazis accused the Jews of, okay, before seizing their shit.
Right?
Little bit strange.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm,
You don't want to
I'm-
work with you don't want the corporation
You're
doesn't want to
right.
work with the
You know
state.
what?
That's not how the Nazis
All right,
did
time
things.
to
That's how
go.
the fascists did things.
I would rather
Ama-
go back to the real world.
Amanda,
Please,
did you have
thank
something you wanted to
Amanda,
add?
Save us.
I would love to see, like, if this is, Encyclopedia Britannica, if this is, Wikipedia.com. I don't know where you're getting
Conservapedia.
I don't know where you're getting these definitions of fascism from, but like if we
It's
could just take
it's anarchocapitalist.com.
Oh,
Give it away.
Okay.
is
So,
it
so
run by
how
a
does the
PayPal?
economic model of fascism work, since I'm so wrong?
In terms of let me tell you about the economic model of communism, because that's what you've described at the beginning of a national
No. You
state.
said I'm wrong.
I mean, they
and
are
now
the
you're
same
pivoting
thing,
to
if we're being
communism.
honest.
No, lack.
Yeah, but like fascism itself exists differently depending on the nation that it's in. Italian fascism is not the same as German fascism. Those both came up differently as like historical context. In the
Yeah,
same way, like
so,
if
yeah,
you're talking
Nazi Germany's fascism was a little bit more third positionist, and Spanish fascism tended to be a little bit more of the syndicalist variety. That
Then
doesn't
could-
matter. Tell
what
me
was
why
the-
I'm wrong, since we've
'Cause
now what you've given
would
evidence
say-
is that
It was
there's
going-
3 different economic models. So
Then
tell
I'd
me,
like to
don't pivot
ask-
to communism. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I'd like to ask, where is the specific example within Nazi Germany where you saw that allocation of goods and services? Yes, the Jewish people were the ones who largely got a lot of those like rights and stuff removed from them. But like the main policy for Nazi Germany is Lebensraum, which means living space. So like the main thing was a land problem. And yes, resources come from land, but like it was not National Socialist Party because of the the fucking abbreviation of it, but like fascism.
Are you saying the reason for the forfeitures was different from what Scott is saying, that the forfeitures happened, but not under the circumstances that he's okay? That you
In
can
context
What
respond.
I'm talking about. So what I stated, right, was the philosophy behind the idea that if you do not cooperate with the state, or that you do something illegal, that they have the right to take away all of your private property.
And
Right?
that
I'm saying
exists
that
in
is the
communism
type
as
of
well.
thing.
They're the same
Yes,
capitalist
I
thing.
agree. Right?
But then
And
what makes this more fascist than communist?
I used fascism.
Friendly
could've
fire,
just
gang.
used
Friendly
socialism,
fire. You're on the same team here, I
I
think.
could have just as
I
easily.
couldn't tell you. I don't know.
I could have.
Can
No, I
use
can't
it
tell
in
you.
the
I could
email,
just as.
right?
I could have
You're-
just as
it's good for
easily.
you.
I just as easily could have said communism, and I just as easily could have said state socialism. I chose fascism.
If
But
you chose,
you're not
if you
saying that
Don't-
I'm wrong
don't give it
because
a
it could
horseshoe.
apply to other things is not an argument as to why I'm wrong. What I'm
National
saying is the
socialism.
destruction of the right of private property
Doesn't exist.
as a means of the state saying that you've done enough bad
The
things,
metaphor.
therefore you can get rid of private property rights, is something that very easily could lead to fascism. It could also lead to communism. Yes, it could. It could also lead to state socialism. It could also lead to, Marxist idea of low communism, right?
Sure.
In the magical.
So we're saying that there's a
Sure.
Like,
Have you heard of like horseshoe theory? It's,
I know. That's what I was just
Send you
saying.
an article.
Don't give into
Sure.
horseshoe theory on here. If anything, it's more like the fork. I'm making this up. The forked road theory. There's always going to be a point that some place is going to be, and depending on the path you start down, that's where you're going to end up. fascism,
The
communism,
fuck did you just
socialism.
say?
Exactly, I made it up. I made that last little bit up. It's like a forked road theory. Depending on where our system is or is somewhat headed, we end up hitting a very particular point in the road where one wrong turn and we're
This
in
is
a
a bad
completely
theory.
bad thing.
Well, we gotta pick
Terrible.
one or the other. There's no the forked
All
road.
I know is that I've
Yeah.
spoken to enough German
Communism,
people. I've
fascism.
been
There
to
is no.
Germany. I'm quite familiar with the country. I'm quite familiar with the people. And as far as how fascism went down, I would say it's not necessarily like an act. You know, I wouldn't use that Bob Ross brush.
Yeah,
No,
well,
that's not.
Amanda, I've watched almost
Right.
30 minutes of YouTube
You already
videos
admitted that.
with like
Right, you
animated
already
clips
admitted
about
that.
this, okay?
You already
Okay.
admitted that fascism has many different varieties, right?
Yeah.
And that the similarity economically from them is that the corporation must work and collude with the interests of the state that is presumably populous in some nation and usually Einvolk in some capacity, right? So when I'm saying that when you get rid of private property rights because there is some alleged crime as opposed to paying restitution and fines for that crime, these are the steps that you take towards economic fascism. And I don't think that you've proven me wrong in that regard.
No, I understand, but like I as somebody who studied Nazi Germany in history class, my brain is not coming to that moment when private property was allocated to these particular people. So I'm asking you if you have something specific that you can connect these two things. I'm like perfectly willing to entertain the idea, but as a broad brush, no, I'm not going to connect to that idea. No.
Yeah, I mean, I'll send you some stuff on civil forfeiture of things and of unions not working with the Nazis specifically.
I would like the fascist Nazi example, please. I'm very, very open to hearing. I love a good book.
Yeah, I'll DM them to you later.
What's the Nazi flavor, please? Right now. And,
But I
mostly did it for the goddamn meme of bringing up Hitler. God.
And here we are. It's really for the thumbnail.
So
right?
I wanted to ask, and so it's like a raise of like a by a show of hands, or flippers, whatever the fuck. If because I brought
raising my hand. I'll make any claim. Let's go.
Okay, I brought up an example in terms of morality. A morality clause attached to public investments into these teams, right? Do you think that's a fair compromise, right? With this, like, if we're going to take away something, and you have a morality clause that you've agreed to take this public money, that is a fair way of taking away something about paying for it. So just
money?
Yeah, I'm saying no. I'm not talking about specifically the Washington Commanders. I'm saying just in general, hypothetically. That's what we do. So
so Prime, I don't agree with publicly funding this stuff, but if we have to, I'm okay with putting a whole bunch of clauses.
We don't have to. Don't bite that fucking bullet, you asshole.
I said
no, but they do
it. Have to, like, if assuming for the hypothetical, like there should be so many clauses where it's like, yeah, like you look at me wrong, you're losing everything. Like, and then hopefully people don't take the money.
Who makes the who decides that? Like, that's my curiosity.
The city.
Like you when it comes to the idea.
We can vote on it. I don't know.
The city, obviously.
When it comes to the idea of a morality clause, it means that somebody has to make that decision.
Absolutely.
And usually the people who make those decisions are the people in power, and the people in power usually tend to be the ones that the vast majority of people do not like. So
have it be by referendum.
That is currently.
Look,
right. So like
Amanda, I'm with Amanda here.
Clauses should only be voluntary. Like,
I'm with Amanda here.
From the basis of the state.
Like the problem with how this actually turns out in practice, right? Like, I get theoretically you can make it and it would go well. Fair enough. I can acknowledge that can sometimes happen. That can sometimes actually really work. But what actually tends to happen with these things, when you look at the teaching sector and other sectors, right? Like, these morality clauses are just twisted to whoever happens to be in power or in charge's viewpoint of what counts as violating.
Well, I mean, we already kind of
and-
have morality clauses, right? Like things like the anti-discrimination laws.
It's okay though. The NFL already has established morality clauses.
I hate to break it to you, but that's actually pretty fascist to
The
say that we're
NFL
only going to go with one particular kind of belief on that, and that's why I think it's a little bit dangerous. If you're saying, because at the end of the day, it's a question of who's in power at that moment to make that decision. In the case of Nazi Germany, the people in power was Hitler and the SAP.
Yeah, let me guess, Amanda, you'd be against. Are you and just to kind of figure out where you're coming from here? This is. What are your feelings on hate speech laws and things like that? Would you be?
I think that. when it comes to hate speech laws, certain areas should be protected, and I think that you should really look at the historical and legal precedent and look at all of the different factors that are involved in it. But I don't think that you can go
But
all
how
the way
does
to
that
the
square?
extreme.
How does that square with your previous statement on morality clauses? Because the same argument you just used against morality clauses would also apply to hate speech laws. It depends on who's in power who
How?
gets to define these
But
things.
the
So,
but
for
the
example,
NFL
right?
already has established morality
Well,
clauses.
so, hold on, we're gonna get to that.
We're talking about this hypothetically, not just the NFL.
Spartacus, we're gonna get to that because I want to bring that up. You got an interesting point, but wait, go ahead, finish.
Yeah. So what I mean by
That's how
that,
they're
like,
forcing this thing.
is well, under like America doesn't have hate speech laws, right? But if it did, if there was laws against hate speech and things like that, absolutely, Trump and those people in power, when they were in power, would have used those laws to say anyone shouting ACAB on the street was violating those laws. They were acting, they were violating this hate speech law, and they were acting contrary to these laws. This absolutely happened because it happens before, right? This is
Wait.
Canada,
What if we
example.
restricted them? What if we restricted the morality clauses to only apply like to breaking laws? So no, you can't like prohibit people from like saying certain things or being racist or. But like if you rape
I'm
somebody,
more okay with
then
that. Yeah,
maybe
I'm
you
more
lose
okay
your
with
shit.
that. I'm
Okay,
more
yeah.
okay with that.
Which I did state before.
Yeah, and which I said I was okay with before, right?
Yeah.
And
That's where I think
Spartacus,
I am at this point. Yeah.
and Spartacus,
Where's
you
the
like
weapon?
you hit the nail on the head. Like you made a fantastic point. The NFL already has these morality clauses in their fucking contracts with their players, right? The
Yes.
players can get tossed. So it seems like we could do the same for owners, right?
They do. That's how they force. That's how they can force sales. The same thing happened with Sterling.
So my understanding is
so
that like
don't think they get
they
fined.
couldn't directly force that sale. They had to like put like indirect pressure on
They have
them.
to do it they have to do it indirectly, and also if he could get enough support, then it wouldn't matter. But like if you get enough support against someone, then they can, exactly as Spartacus explained earlier, right? Like they can basically censor you from doing a goddamn thing until you sell.
I think when it comes to this, though, like with the morality clause, like it's perfectly reasonable for a business, like a private business, to have that. So if Washington or any of these other teams are listed as a private business, like that individual team could like potentially make that argument because they are a private business, and if you don't want to interact with that business for that morality clause, like you're more than welcome to. But if this is a publicly funded thing, then you're talking about like a huge population of people.
The thing is though is that the NFL is a private business. The people who own teams, the ownership of the team is considered it's almost considered like you own it, but you own the rights to the team, but you don't actually own the team. Because the NFL does establish rules. They do establish morality clauses league wide. They do establish these things. And typically it's not even typically, it's established league wide among all the teams. And so the ownership of the team is typically running the team, is typically the profits from the team, and that's what you're in charge of. Not necessarily like the private business
you
part
own
where
the
you can
team,
decide
but not
what
the
you
league.
want to
Like,
do
I don't
with
think
the team.
anybody's saying that they own the
I understand,
league, right?
but the league has ultimate control of the team.
No, that's not true.
That is true. It's been proven multiple times.
Yeah, then why
NFL,
can't
the
league right now
NFL,
just strip the
the
team away
NFL,
from him and pass it on to somebody else?
the
Yes, they
NFL just suspended the Miami Dolphins owner, and then fined the Miami Dolphins owner.
Okay, but they couldn't just replace him, right? They can't say, "Hey, we're going to take our team back and give it to somebody else," because they
so
don't own it.
Can I ask a
Because it counts as a
clarifying question?
franchise,
Like,
doesn't it?
does like, so I'm ignorant to all these things, but does like the NFL or NBA like have the ability to like just say like this team can't play in our league?
Yes,
mean,
the
they
NFL
could.
also has that ability to remove the team.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to know that.
Yeah, so they don't own the team. They put certain rules over the team's like participation in the league. They don't own the team.
I mean,
They-
can we just point out
they-
that it's a shitty business
let me put it this way.
practice for them to
Let me
go
put-
too
let me put it
overhanded
this way.
in that regard? Like,
Let me put it this way: they don't
if
own the
if they
stadium.
just started... Okay, go ahead.
They don't own the stadium, but they certainly do own the team. They have
No,
the
that doesn't make
merit,
any sense.
so it does make sense because the team inside the NFL. The only reason it's a team is because it's inside the NFL. So they don't own the stadium per se, but they do own the team.
No, they don't.
Yes, the
but that's
Washington.
so, like,
Can you
twisted.
okay?
They
Can you
own the
listen for a
name.
second? They own the
Listen, it's a
Washington.
stupid point.
Okay, can you listen for a second, please? Thank
I'll
you.
listen for 5 more seconds.
All right. They own the team. They can remove the Washington Commanders from the National Football League.
That doesn't mean they own the team, though. That means
yes,
they own
because
the league.
okay,
and they're
then where
able to say that your team can't
where
participate
do the
in our
Commanders
league,
go?
but
Where
they
do the
don't own
Commanders
the
go?
fucking team.
Where do the
So
Commanders
just
go?
'cause the
If they're removed from the
Commanders wouldn't
league,
have a
where do they
league to
go?
play in,
They can start
doesn't
their
mean they're
own
not
league.
owned by the owner of the
What's in
fucking
the
A league
team.
of their
Then
own.
what?
They're
No,
they
no,
have
no. Wait.
my-
What would you have to do to own? What would you have to do to make your own league? Lactoid, you said they
We'd
can
have
make their own
other
league.
teams.
start
What
a
would you have
league.
They're willing to
No,
start a league.
you
What
would
do
need to
mean?
start another business because
No.
none
What
of
are you
these.
saying?
Filing an
What are you
LLC
saying,
You have a
Colin?
team in
Hold
place,
on,
though.
hold on.
Filing an
Are you
LLC
saying
costs
Colin-
$110.
Hold on. Are you saying Colin Kaepernick was right when he made that ad with all the NFL players in chains because they were literally owned?
No,
They
I'm not
own
saying
the
I'm not.
team.
I'm not saying they're literally owned. What I'm saying is they don't own. They don't. The NFL owns the teams. If the Commanders are removed, they're no longer an NFL team. The owner of the quote unquote owner of the team can of course make a new league, can of course do all these other things, but it has to. But it does. They own the stadium. It has to be outside of the NFL. They would no longer have practice inside the NFL. They own the stadium, but they do not own the team. I'm
gotta
trying
go
to
to
figure
the
out.
CFL.
So
try
if
to
they
figure out how to
but if they
explain
kick
this
them out of the
to you.
NFL, right? They said, hey, this team can't participate in the NFL anymore, and the Commanders, still owned by this guy, right? Still with all their merch and all this shit, said, hey, okay, well, we're just gonna have games for ourselves with other teams who want to have games with us, right, in some stadium somewhere. They could do that, and the NFL wouldn't be able to do shit about it because they don't own the fucking team.
Okay, again, the NFL does own the team. They own the rights.
God.
They own the rights to own the rights to the NFL. They own the rights to these teams. They
That's
are
not the
NFL
same
teams.
thing.
They
Wait,
do own
Sprout,
the rights.
can I ask you, if they remove the Commanders, who gets the right to use the name Commanders? The Commanders or the NFL?
I'm fairly sure
NFL, I
that
think.
I'm fairly sure the NFL would maintain the rights to the Commander's name.
So they'd have to change their name. They couldn't be the
Yes.
Washington. Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
I'm
I
fairly
don't know
sure
if
the
that's true or
NFL
not.
would maintain the rights to the Commander's name.
I don't know about that either. I feel like that would be part of the
That'd be
franchise in
NFL.
itself.
That's,
and
that's bullshit.
I think
mean,
the NFL. Go ahead.
We can look at this, but if they didn't own the team, how can you suspend an owner? How can you suspend and find an owner?
And suspend them and say, hey, you can't participate in the league anymore, which is what they have the ability to do.
No, they didn't suspend the Miami Dolphins owner and say, hey, you can't participate in the league anymore. That would be removal from the league. The owner was restricted from showing up to the stadium for several weeks and fined money for his practices. This is something that the NFL applied to the Miami Dolphins for what they deemed to be violations of what the NFL has set out. So
That's
the
not,
NFL.
That's not evidence of ownership, though. Right?
Yeah.
Like, you can set up a contract that says you have to do these certain things, and technically speaking, like if you're looking at it from like a natural law perspective, what that means is if you violate those terms, then there's some form of restitution within the contract, which is a reverting of the ownership at the moment that you break the terms and conditions of the contract until the fine is paid or the time is paid in which ownership reverts back to the other person. What you're talking about isn't like actual, like I'm not saying you're wrong.
Here we go.
I'm just saying you're not giving any evidence.
So
to support
this
your
is
idea.
this is underneath NFL merit to removal. So underneath NFL merit to removal, basically the NFL could decide that Snyder should be removed. It would need to build a case and engage in conduct detrimental that the appropriate penalty is not a fine or suspension but expulsion. The NFL would rely on findings by Mary Jo White, the former chair of the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission. Snyder would have 15 days to answer the charge. I'm just skimming through this right now, trying to find the important parts. Snyder would have counsel and can rebuke the accusations. Snyder can also insist that if his conduct warrants punishment, expulsion would be excessive and unlawful penalties under the NFL's own policies. ESPN recently reported he has hired private investigators to research other owners, although Snyder called the report as false and malicious.
Sure.
Would,
Yeah,
so
can-
in
can
addition,
you
in-
find
in-
what
Yeah,
you're
take-
looking for?
yes. If
You're just talking
24.
about contract.
So
agreement,
I'm
not
going.
ownership.
I'm going.
While you're doing that,
the-
yeah, while you're doing that, just like look for like
I
specifically
already
thing.
found it. I was going through the general process before I got there, but I'll just skip right to it. If 24 or more owners nonetheless voted to sustain the charge, the outcome would be final, conclusive, and unappealable under the league's constitution. Snyder would then have 120
yeah.
days to sell the team. If Snyder refuses, the NFL could turn to arbitration to set a price In a sale, Snyder would be
Right,
paid the
so
proceeds
he
less
owns-
legal expenses incurred by the league in charge
Yeah,
of him.
he owns
So
the
he
team.
owns the team. That's what you just said.
If you own a
Just
team, how could
refuted
you
your
be
own
for?
argument.
No, if you own a team,
Because
how
you
could
signed
you?
a contract.
If you
I
own
just
a team,
explained
how
it to
could
you.
you be forced to sell your team by a separate organization? You can't be
Because
forced
you
to
signed
sell
a
a.
contract.
you
So
can't
wait,
be.
Sprout, under this
under
logic,
a
then you don't
contract,
think
then.
anybody owns anything because of like
No,
eminent
if
domain,
you
right?
live in an
Oh,
HOA,
I'm
if you, no,
gonna
wait,
say
wait. If you live in an
whatever it
if
is.
you live in an HOA, you don't technically own your house because the
No,
HOA
you
could
do.
force you to sell it. You don't
No,
technically own
because
your
you
house.
signed
No.
because you signed a restrictive covenant. You still own that house.
So you don't technically own your house though. The HOA can force you to
Yeah,
sell your
okay.
house.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Okay, let's
Okay,
move past
nobody
this.
owns
Look,
anything,
just real quick,
and we
just real quick.
already
Yeah.
Prime,
already ready.
we're-
to
Yeah.
nobody
the
owns
title
Yeah.
for
anything
your
and we're
YouTube
happy.
tonight, the title when you put this on
Yeah,
YouTube,
calm
the
down.
title will be like Sprout doesn't know the law, and that's the title.
No,
and
no,
that's
that's-
what
it-
has been
Okay, yeah,
demonstrated
it-
the
it
entire
just
that's
time.
fine, Wick. That's fine, Wick. You can take cheap. You can take cheat shots. You can take
Nope.
cheat shots like that, but you don't have true ownership if someone else can force you to sell your private property.
So here's an example,
If
right?
you're
So
gonna-
No
if
one,
you're
no,
gonna
no
be
one
that
could
mean,
force
at
me to
least be
sell.
funny.
No one could
I have
force me to
another
sell this
example.
chair.
The reason
I
this is making
own this
sense
chair,
because
no one
the
can force
government
me
can
to
force
sell
you to
this
sell your
chair.
property through eminent domain, right? So nobody owns anything then.
But no, that's the government. This is a
that's the
non-governmental
government,
organization.
The government's
This is a,
fucking
this,
different
so
now,
wait,
okay.
this is a non-governmental organization. The eminent domain is completely different, and we can talk about eminent domain if you want to. But eminent domain does not state that the person does not like specifically apply to ownership.
Back to it.
Eminent-
Back to it.
This is like Law and Order. or
So
something.
here's yet another example. So I follow a lot of battle rap, and in the King of the Dot tournament between Disaster and Math Hoffa, Disaster punched Math Hoffa in the face. It was really intense.
I have fucking questions now.
And they gave Disaster a number of terms. Like, in order to come back to the King of the Dot League, you have to do this. Like, you have to pay a fine. You have to like go to anger management or some shit. Like, we don't want you to be punching other rappers. That doesn't mean that like the league owns Disaster or owns Math Hoffa or owns any of their like respective trademarks. It just means that like they set up a league that you are like participating in, and if you don't follow their terms, they can kick you out.
No, it's not just kick you out. They can force you to sell.
Sure. I mean, and then if you sign a contract saying you have to force to sell your name and your branding, that doesn't mean you don't own it. That just means that you may have to give up ownership if certain things happen because you
So-
did that.
There are terms of ownership. Maybe.
I have, first of all, Lactoid. The more I learn about this, man, the more interested I am. And I know King of the Dot. I'm aware of that. That's a
I've seen
competition.
every single battle on that whole.
Amazing.
I love you
Amazing.
right now.
I want to
Oh,
learn
so
so much
look it
more
up.
about this, man. But yeah, like it's the thing about that's viable about the NFL team isn't the NFL team in and of itself, right? It's participation within the league. So the league says that to continue that participation, you have to follow these rules. And if we suspend you, well, this is the behavior that you'll conduct yourself in, right? Like not showing up at the property, right? Well, then you're gonna do that because if not, then if they did the unbelievable and actually toss the team out of the NFL, right? Well, then it's worthless. Right? No one's going to give a shit about a team that's not part of the NFL. Like literally a league of their own. They can play like shirts versus skins,
I said
right?
come to the
Between
CFL,
them, but that's
Canadian
it.
Football League.
Toronto Argos. Yeah, shout out.
Yeah,
Oh,
Montreal
yeah.
Alouettes. Montreal.
Yeah,
What?
that'd
The
be
Argos?
negative fucking value,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. We've got a little stadium and everything.
I think
There's,
it's
you know,
funny.
grass.
It's funny how we're trying to get like London their own team before the Canadians. It's so sad.
London's
It's
trying to
okay,
get
we
their
have
own team.
baseball.
So there's a reason why the NFL hosts games in Europe, and it's the stated reason is because like they're looking to expand into Europe, like so the UK potentially give them their own teams.
I'm offended. Come on, they already have football there.
Real
Uh,
football.
No.
Yeah.
Hmm.
PBH.
No.
Okay, so with
Okay.
our remaining time, right? I'm gonna pick on Doobie, because why not? And
Yay.
you didn't raise your or whatever that appendage is. Flipper. When I said I asked about putting in a morality clause. So do you not agree with that?
Not in this case, but I can see situations where morality clause would be like reasonable, but I think in this case it'd be strange to do this because this is like a mutually beneficial relationship the teams have with the cities, Right, so they attract a lot of tourism, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. It's a little bit strange to have it set up that way.
Well, I mean, like other like there are other things within a city that like attract attention, right? But if they are specifically publicly funded by that, I mean, like they're taking subsidies or whatever, right? If
Not
that's
publicly funded.
publicly,
Yeah, but
okay,
they're given these like benefits because the city wants them there because they make a lot of money from the team's presence.
yeah,
Right.
Not-
We
I
agreed
agree.
to not commit the crime of theft from them specifically, which advantages them over other
Yeah, it's
people.
like you have like a highwayman on a bridge, right? And
that's
he's like,
not-
"Hey, I won't rob you, but I'll rob the
Right.
guy behind."
Right, exactly.
Dibby, don't
The public funding
please,
to not
please
rob
don't
someone.
give credits to this fucking
Why
handcuff
are you
nonsense.
booing? I'm
You're
right.
It's true.
Oh my god. I will.
That's
Yeah, I just can't deal with it all. But
What? I'm
do you
fucking
agree
right.
that
It's
there
okay.
is okay? So if we help, by we being the city, right? We help pay for a stadium, right? Or we donate the land, right? Public land, and hey, this is yours, so you can build your stadium. Is that not an investment into that company?
a subsidy.
That's different. If you donate the land or you don't make them pay for something, that's different.
A
Okay.
subsidy. Gotcha.
Great. DB, would you agree?
Yeah. Because
Okay.
at that point, you're basically you're not just saying, "Hey, I'm not going to steal from you." You're actively giving them public like resources.
Okay,
Which
great.
Crime.
Is a
The crime
subsidy,
has
right?
already been committed, so it doesn't matter what.
It's
the
not a
terms of the
crime.
contract are.
Like going back to
Because
Nazi
money-
Germany.
Taxes
So,
are
so
not
imagine,
crime.
Money and
So
land
taxes
was
are not
already
crime.
stolen from the people and then given.
Taxes
to
are
someone
not
else.
Out of
crimes.
this.
Doesn't
Taxes
matter
are
what the
not
terms and
crimes.
conditions
Yeah.
of the contract is.
So going back to Nazi Germany, so it'd be like after the Nazis took all the jewelry and shit from the Jews, right? If you came by afterwards and they said, "Hey, I'm gonna give you some of this fucking these watches or whatever the fuck, or these teeth, these gold teeth," right? Then it's like equivalent to that, right? So they've already taken the property, the crime's already been committed. Now they're giving it to you.
Well, no, they gave it to the Swiss. They put it in a Swiss bank.
True.
I love
True.
Swiss.
Lacto, do you have any Swiss
Oh,
blood
that's
in
funny.
you?
That's the
What's
truth.
up? What's up?
Do you have any Swiss blood in you? Lactoid?
No.
Swedish
Okay.
blood.
But Bram, like I
Mm.
think
Wrong
we
country.
already have.
I know,
so the
but,
people
like,
that
I'm
were-
just-
I got some Swiss cheese in my refrigerator.
I'm just saying
Does
that,
that
like,
count?
guys
That's
eat
a
your bread a
thing.
lot.
Shout
How
out,
far?
that's
I'm. Dibby, say your thing, and then I want to make fun of Lactoid. Dibby, go ahead.
Well, so I think so. The people who are like opposed to morality laws, right, or morality clause, I'm pretty curious. Like, so because we already have these in some ways, right? So like to get a business license, right, you basically agree to operate your business in a certain way by rules and regulations. Some of them have little to do with like the financial structure of your business, and they're just morality. Like you can't turn away a black person or a white person or whatever the fuck, right? That's just like morality that's being imposed upon you because somebody in the government has decided this is what they want to do.
But
Right?
they,
So I'm
Okay,
curious.
great.
So the
You
people that
can't
were
not
opposed
do
to the
that.
morality clause, the people that were opposed to the morality clauses, are you also opposed to that?
no, because they've codified
Yes.
that into federal law.
That doesn't
right?
make any sense.
That does make sense,
What?
and let me
No,
explain
it
why.
doesn't.
Right? Let me explain why. Okay, when you have the vagaries of, so there is a lot of precedent behind what counts as discrimination and what doesn't. Right? Like it's very well defined. But what happens in work and employment clauses and things like that with teachers, for example, right? Like those are often, not always, but often very poorly defined and poorly set out, and people can get kicked out for things that just
Sure.
would not reasonably
But
qualify.
Wick,
right?
the fact that you that you're saying that I even need to give a fuck, right? I need to say to come up with a reason that isn't I just don't want to hire a Muslim, right? To get rid of this person, right? Like so the fact that you're imposing this belief of yours, this ideal of yours upon me, is you imposing your morality upon me and my business. Right,
Yeah, but
and
it's not.
if I don't do it, you're gonna punish me. You're gonna take my business license, all that kind of shit, right? So like, it is just a morality clause.
Yeah, but there is a distinct difference in how these things are applied and how these things are set up. And it's not the fact, the problem I have with morality clauses isn't the fact that I'm imposing my morality on someone else. because when I make laws against murder, that's imposing my morality on someone else. I understand it. But my problem with the morality clauses is usually just how they interact with the real world when the rubber meets the road, usually when it comes to employment specifically. When it comes to things like federal law, like protecting against discrimination, again, we have years of precedence in this years of court cases about this. It's very, very strictly defined and very, very strictly codified, and I think that protects against
Okay,
the
but saying they've had
excesses
this
and
morality
the
clause in effect for a
problems.
long time doesn't mean it's not a morality clause.
Yeah, and also like that's almost like a testament. We start implementing it now, so we have years of court cases and precedents, and like just like let the same history run out with the federal law at the federal level,
But
which you're
when we
okay
look
with.
at things like civil court enforcing morality laws, like Lactoid brought up earlier, and how juries can sometimes award outrageous sums and things like
Well,
that.
according to him,
Yeah,
outrageous.
if you
not me.
one racism,
No.
that's $30 trillion, sir. Okay?
Right? You know what I mean?
You made a
the
mistake
problem.
there, buddy.
We got a number, you know,
I'm okay with that. Bring it on.
and it's not too high, so people aren't too mad. Heaven forbid.
But I don't see how this is like, you could disagree with it, and that's fine. And I think there's room for me to be swayed on this. But when it comes to it's just ridiculous, no, that's not true at all, right? I think I've laid out fairly reasonable standards
Look,
here.
the law.
All you've said is you agree with it, so it's fine.
Look, the laws can change at any moment in terms of what business practices are. Like you could have a new government come in, or like just a new thing be discovered, right? That you kind of already forced to be under because you have a business. Like a great example of this was oh my god, mesothelioma and asbestos, right? The EPA stepped in. It wasn't like everyone signed a new fucking business license because the laws changed. They were forced as like legally, they're not legally allowed to operate a business without having a business license, right? Or the IRS and the government comes and arrests you for your lemonade stand, right? And then what ended up happening was the EPA just created regulations on mesothelioma. I'm sorry, not mesothelioma, on asbestos removal. Later, Congress changed it. I don't have the exact dates, but this put a lot of small businesses out of business because they were like absurdly stringent, and like new construction from small businesses simply couldn't absorb the cost because they had to like put these massive tents up, and they had to wear like they had to wear like level 4 mop gear and like do all of this shit initially. And like small businesses literally couldn't afford to do this. Large corporations did. And then eventually the laws like loosened and but the thing is that there's no difference between that and the state having a morality clause. It's an imposition via contract. The only actual difference is that the morality clause is slightly better because you have specific things that you have to follow that are laid out in the contract initially, as opposed to a vacuous system of law that can change. So if your opinion is that, you actually should reverse it. You should say, fuck the business licenses.
Yeah.
We'll sign explicit contracts that tell us what we can and can't do for the benefits that we get, because at least then I know exactly what I'm supposed to do, as opposed to this ever-changing leviathan of rules.
But in one system, I have much more influence, right? Because they can change, right? I have much more also separate from that. I have the ability.
I mean, if you're
to,
Amazon, you can buy politicians, maybe.
If
It's the only way to do it.
voting is important, gang, and voting matters, and voting's effective. So, but that's a different topic.
Vote Tuesday. Let's go.
And come to the stream tomorrow for the voting.
I'll
Vote
be
first.
streaming myself.
Okay,
Be
but
Vote
quiet,
first,
Canadians.
stream later.
but when it comes down to the fact that like you have recourse in the federal system that I just don't think you do when it comes to these business contracts.
So